Okay, we are recording and we are live on YouTube. I will be letting people in now.
Good morning, and welcome to worship at the Channel Islands cluster of UU congregations. This service is coming to you from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. I am Worship Associate Celia Ortenberg, and I'm honored to be joined by a host of others who are here to make this service possible for you. One of the greatest gifts that we have discovered during the last 18 months of virtual Sundays has been that we are not alone. We have found creative ways to survive and thrive and support one another as neighboring congregations. It has been a gift to get to know each other. This summer, each congregation has created a service to share with us all, strengthening the bonds within our region, deepening our spiritual lives, and appreciating our differences, as well as celebrating all that we have in common. It has been a summer to experiment, have a little fun, and take a road trip in the comfort of our own homes. Today is our last official road trip Sunday, and I think that we here at the UU Church of Ventura have a real treat for you. We have invited our own Tanner Linden to speak with us during this service. I say our own because Tanner grew up right here in our Ventura church. He's our own homegrown UU, but Tanner has grown far beyond us. He is now a Gen Z religious professional who currently serves the largest Unitarian Universalist church in the world, a congregation that manages the expansive UU prison ministry. I'm always inspired by what Tanner has to teach me, and I hope that you will be too. So hold on to your socks. This road trip's not done yet. After the service, you will have a chance to join the coffee hour for your home congregation, perhaps to pop into a different coffee hour and meet some new friends, or to join Tanner to talk about his very meaningful work. If you're new to Unitarian Universalism and are visiting with us today from wherever you call home, we are so glad that you're here, and you're welcome to join us from whichever virtual coffee hour you like. And now I have a news flash for everyone. Jim Scott will be here at the UU Church in Ventura to do a concert this coming Saturday, August 15th at 3 o'clock. You may know him as the writer of the hymn, Gather the Spirit, and so many more. He'll be playing wonderful music for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. There's a suggested donation of $10 per person or $20 per family. Look for the link in the chat and reserve your seats if you're interested so that we know how many chairs to pull out. Masks are required. We in Ventura would love to have you join us, so we hope that you'll be able to be there. Now, let us enter sacred space.
Good morning. I'm Worship Associate Sue Brinkmeyer. I hope everyone has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Please join Tanner and me as we light our chalices together with these words adapted from Maureen Killeran. For every time we make a mistake and we decide to start again.
For every time we are lonely and let someone be our friend.
For every time we are disappointed and we choose to hope.
For every time we forgive ourselves or one another.
For every time we shine the light of love into the world. We light this chalice.
Our call to worship this morning comes from the Reverend Sharon Wiley. We speak so often of brokenness in religious life. Let us speak today of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you, every part of you, just the way you are. You don't need to do or be or change anything about yourself. No holding back, no hiding, no exerting yourself or trying to do more or be more. You and your soul is sacred and worthy. There's nothing to prove here, not to me, not to our worship associates, not to the people in this Zoom room. You don't have to try to be anyone but yourself. You don't have to be more quiet or outgoing. You don't have to post in the chat if you don't want to, or you could post a bunch in the chat. This space is for you, your beautiful self, right as you are. You don't need to change anything about yourself to be welcome here. Your skin, your hair, your belly, your limbs, your face, they're all beautiful just the way they are. You are extraordinary. We are extraordinary. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Carolyn Bierke. I'm the music director of UUCV, and I'd like to welcome you all. Our opening hymn is Circle Round for Freedom. Let's sing it through twice. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep our circle whole.
Beautiful. Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fidelity, and I'm the Director of Religious Education for our Ventura congregation. Today's Story for All Ages explains how strong the pull towards complacency can sometimes be. The story also explains how we can be drawn to fight that urge when we are in community with others. Please enjoy the story, Desmond Gets Free, written by Matt Meyer and illustrated by Kim Pham. Desmond the mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all the land. Every morning, Desmond woke with the sunrise and would spend the day playing in the meadow. And every evening, Desmond would go to sleep in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky. One night, though, Desmond awoke when it was still dark out. He tried to roll over to a more comfortable spot, but something wasn't right. Desmond came to realize that his tail was stuck right to the ground and beginning to throb with pain. He felt behind him, and there was a huge boulder that seemed to have fallen in the middle of the meadow, just on his tail. Desmond pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail. He pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail, and he pushed and tugged and pushed and tugged. but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up, he saw a giraffe nearby in the grass. Good news, he thought. Oh, giraffe, Desmond cried. Could you please push the boulder a few inches in the other direction so that I could go free? The giraffe looked at Desmond and laughed the way giraffes tend to do. Silly mouse, said the giraffe. That's no boulder. That's an elephant that's fallen asleep in the middle of the meadow, just on your tail. Well, if you could just wake the elephant and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. Well, replied the giraffe, you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best to not get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these. Desmond quietly replied, well, I do not appreciate your neutrality. The giraffe wandered off, and Desmond tried calling out to the elephant to wake him up. But those giant ears were just too far away on the other side of that giant elephant body. So again, Desmond pushed on the elephant and tugged on his tail. He pushed and he tugged and he pushed and he tugged, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up again, a gazelle wandered by. Oh, gazelle, he cried. Oh, gazelle, it seems that an elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I'm stuck and it hurts. I wonder if you could just gently wake him and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so I might go free. Well, said the gazelle, I see a problem there, but you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these. Desmond replied almost to himself this time, I do not appreciate your neutrality. Desmond tried again to call out to the elephant. He tried again to push the giant animal away. He tried again and again to tug his little tail free, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up for the last time, he saw another mouse wandering through the meadow. My name is Nelson. Nelson. This giant elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you might run over and call out into his giant ears and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so I could go free? Desmond asked. Of course, said Nelson. Nelson ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body and he called up to those giant elephant ears at the top of that giant elephant head. But the elephant didn't budge. The elephant heard Nelson's small voice far away, but he felt too comfortable to move. Nelson ran back to Desmond a little out of breath and said, I have an idea. Don't move. He ran off. I won't, muttered Desmond. A little while later, though, Nelson emerged through the tall grass and he wasn't alone. Nelson had found 3 other mouse friends to help him, and each one of them had also brought along another 3 friends. The whole group of them ran over to the giant head of that giant elephant. One mouse scrambled up onto the shoulders of another, and another mouse scrambled up on her shoulders. And then one after another, they climbed up until the whole group of them had formed a long mouse ladder right up the side of that elephant. At last, Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his mouse friends, one on top of the other, until he was way up on that giant elephant head, standing next to that giant elephant ear. Excuse me, he called out right into that ear. It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you could just roll over a few inches in the other direction so he might go free. The giant elephant made a giant low groan. Grumph. I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away. So Nelson asked more of his mouse friends to climb up. One by one, they helped each other up the side of the elephant. One by one, they called out into that giant elephant ear on top of that giant elephant head. Again, the giant elephant made a giant low groan. Grumph. I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away. Then Nelson had an idea. He whispered to the mice, and then all at once they yelled out together, "Excuse us, it seems you've fallen asleep on our friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. Roll over a few inches in the other direction so he can go free." This time, all those voices together right next to the elephant's ear were too loud to ignore. "I was comfortable where I was, but I'll move over if you just agree to stop making such a racket," the elephant cried out. And then the elephant rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and the other mice helped each other climb back down, and Desmond was finally free. Desmond and Nelson and all their mouse friends spent the rest of that beautiful day playing in the middle of that beautiful meadow. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So I love this story, and it reminds me of a spiritual pact I made with myself about a year ago. I promised myself that anytime a friend or a family member or someone in my sphere of influence said something that was racist or harmful, and I had an opportunity to speak up, I would. Every single time, no excuses, I would say something. It was a big spiritual promise to make because I was fully used to letting it go or making an excuse or thinking it would be too uncomfortable. And this last year, I have had a whole host of uncomfortable conversations with people who I love, who are seemingly well-intentioned and have offered a different perspective, and have been proud of myself for the times I've spoken up, and also mindful of the times that I still have failed to do so. And I thought when I first made the spiritual pact to myself that it would always be hard and it would never get easier to practice doing something that is really scary, to practice standing up and speaking for justice. Every time, no excuses, speak up. But I found Brene Brown's statement to be true. Courage is like, it's a habit, a virtue. You get it by courageous acts. It's like you learn to swim by swimming. You learn courage by couraging.
Thank you, Fidelity. Nice lead in to this moment. Each congregation joining us here today is doing work to build a better, more sustainable world, one filled with peace and justice, joy and love. Each congregation relies on your generosity to sustain its work. We give as individuals in hope that through our collective donations, much more can be done than any one of us could do alone. The link to your congregation's offering plate is on the slide and is also posted in the chat. You can click through at any time to make a donation.
Oh, gather up the brokenness and bring it to me now. The fragrance of the troubled dust concealing and undivided love, the heart beneath is teaching to the broken heart above. Let the heavens falter and let the earth proclaim, come healing of the altar, come healing of the name. Oh, longing of the branches to lift the little bud, oh, longing of the arteries to purify the blood, and let the heavens hear it, the penitential hymn, come healing of the spirit, come healing of the limb. Oh, let the heavens hear it, the penitential hymn, come healing of the spirit, come healing of the limb.
Hi, that was beautiful. We are always grateful for the gifts you offer. Your generosity helps us as Unitarian Universalists build the world we envision.
We want to take just a moment now to acknowledge the joys and sorrows that create our fully lived lives. In many of our congregations, we take time in our service to rejoice in our fortunes and support each other in our sorrows. Some of us will share these after the service during the breakout rooms, but we want to acknowledge the passages, the hurts, the moments that make our lives full, and be grateful for all that is our life.
Please join me in singing There Is More Love Somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Hope. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. Peace. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. Joy. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Thank you for that. Our reading today comes from Starhawk. Community means strength. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered, half imagined, we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate us with us wherever we come into our own power, whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms that hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free. And I invite us now to close our eyes and get comfortable in our seats as we move into a time of silent reflection and contemplation. As we breathe a few nice deep breaths together, we quiet our minds. We let go of the concerns of the day, the week behind us, and the week ahead of us, and we simply follow the breath. As we move gently into our communal silence, we also move into a space of surrender to which is beyond our control, and we open ourselves to a peace that just may be waiting for us there. Thankful for the community that brought us here. Thankful for the community that we have found, loving us for just being ourselves. And thankful for the community that reaches beyond us to help those in need, to which community creates a life-saving force.
I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. If I don't lift her up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. If I don't lift him up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy.
So there's so much I want to speak about today, but I'm going to start asking this question. What is the lens through which Unitarian Universalists look at the world? And there's a lot of ways we could answer this question. We could say love or justice, but these sound too simple. We could talk about the 7 principles or 6 sources, but that doesn't feel quite right. This is where I want to talk about the 5 jagged rocks. Many of you are familiar with them. Some of you are not, I'm sure. They're an evolving group of 5 foundations that we base our Unitarian Universalist faith on. They bring a more individualized view of what we believe and how we look at the world as people of faith. The 5 jagged rocks are: truth continues to be revealed. All souls are sacred and worthy. There is a unity that makes us one. There is salvation in this life, and beloved community is our purpose. But let's back up a little bit. Why 5? Why jagged? Why rocks? Maybe you've heard of them, but you haven't heard the background. It starts with a Bible story many of us are familiar with, 1 Samuel 17. In this story, a young shepherd, David, battles Goliath, a warrior who's taunting and terrorizing King Saul and his people. There was no one in the land that was thought to be able to conquer Goliath, but David believed he could. This young shepherd boy, not quite a boy, but not quite a man, stepped up to face Goliath. But he didn't grab any weapons. Instead, he grabbed 5 smooth stones. And he walked into battle with his 5 stones, his sling, and a staff. Now, odds were on Goliath, right? But as he approached Goliath, he swung, whipped, and just twirled his sling and flung a stone right at Goliath. And with that very first stone, he liberated his people. He defeated Goliath. And this story is what inspired James Luther Adams, a Unitarian minister and theologian, to create the 5 smooth stones. And these 5 smooth stones of religious liberalism were figurative stones that were supposed to be what religious liberals used to be in relationship with one another and to starve off the demons and the terrors, the Goliaths of the world. But again, still wasn't perfect. And over time, with contribution from many people, the 5 smooth stones developed and got added to, and the 5 jagged rocks took form. They're not smooth or perfectly worded or complete, but they feel right as a lens in which we can look at the world as people of faith. When someone says, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? It's a set of ideas that is both so divine and so human, right? Truth continues to be revealed. We all hold a piece of the truth. All souls are sacred and worthy. There's something, a unity that makes us one, salvation in this life, heaven on earth, and beloved community is our purpose, right? And these are the closest things that we could get to a dogma or doctrine as Unitarian Universalists. And if we were the type to preach on the streets, which I know many of us are not, this is what we would be preaching about. And looking through the lens of the 5 jagged rocks is the bedrock of doing ministry on the margins. Our social justice work, serving people who are living on the streets or in immigration detention centers, showing up for love, protesting, believing survivors, caring for all people as beings of the gifts and beings of this earth, right? Our anti-racism work. This is how we leverage our faith and our beliefs and our values to make that heaven on earth we know is possible. But I'll be honest, as we look through this lens, not everything is always so clear, right? There's these blurry places, things that are foggy, things we struggle to understand. I mean, the 5 jagged rocks sounds great, but is a heaven on earth possible? Is there really some unity that makes us one when we feel so divided? Is every person really worthy of love? Is every person really sacred? I mean, you have to have asked yourselves these questions being a Unitarian Universalist. I often hear this question. I contemplate this question. And when we do so, we start thinking of the worst people we can imagine. I know you've played this game. Like, we start thinking of the Hitlers of the world, right? The Stalins, the Osama bin Ladens. Like, there's no shortage of people who have done horrible things. And that's where our mind goes. Are they worthy of love? Are those people sacred? But this is where I pause. Invite people and myself to think smaller, start smaller. What about your neighbor, your friend, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, your spouse, your sibling? Are they worthy of love? What about that person that broke your heart? Or that person that stole something from you or broke something of yours? Are these people sacred? Are they worthy of love? Because if we're looking through that lens of Unitarian Universalism, that's a resounding yes. These people, the heartbroken, the outcast, the imprisoned, the oppressed, these people are all worthy of love, right? You'll never look into the eyes of someone that was never loved by someone else. And this has been a huge learning for me and deepening my belief in Unitarian Universalism with the work I'm doing with the Church of the Larger Fellowship and our prison ministry network. This network is called Worthy Now, and it invites people on both sides of prison walls, both incarcerated and in the free world, into beloved community with each other. It declares that all people are worthy of love, respect, justice, and support, not at some distant time when all of us are better people, but as we are right now. And Worthy Now is actively working to provide spiritual sustenance for those in prison, while simultaneously trying to dismantle the systems that imprison them. And as of today, Worthy Now supports over 1,300 people living in hundreds of different prisons across the United States. Worthy Now is supporting at least one person in every single one of the 50 states. For me, Worthy Now is the very manifestation of living our faith through this lens that I spoke about. As Unitarian Universalists, abolition, ministry on the margins, and siding with love is part of our faith. And I couldn't talk about our prison ministry network without talking about what we believe. And I can't talk about what we believe without talking about how we live it out into the world. The lens with which we look at the world becomes the way we live through the world. Let me say that again. The lens with which we look at the world becomes the way we live through the world. And I'll be completely honest with you, this is easier said than done. When I first joined the Church of the Larger Fellowship, an important part of my role was being the first point of contact for people who are interested in our ministry. A lot of times that's just calls and emails. But shortly after I started, I started receiving calls from inside prisons and letters from incarcerated people who are curious about who we are and what we believe. And I want to be really vulnerable with you all. I was nervous at first. I mean, I was scared of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or being the wrong person. I mean, if I can be really honest with you, I was even maybe scared of who was on the other end of that call, right? Because like society tells us to forget these people. Society tells us that these people are too broken. And we've been raised with images in our head of what people in prison are supposed to look and act and be like, right? I mean, the system purposely dehumanizes people in prison, not just inside the facilities, but in the lawmaking and the policing and the reporting and just the way we talk to each other. Centers around vilifying someone, communities. It centers around dehumanizing hurt people. And look, maybe you're just holier than me or more accepting than I am, and you're immune to all of this. Like you grew up with no preconceptions of what someone sitting in a prison cell looks or acts or is. Maybe you're immune to the way society has forgotten these people and broken these people. And if you received a call from inside a prison or received a letter to your door, you'd have no pit in your stomach. You'd have no preconception. But if you're anything like me, I did. I want to be real with you so we can grow together. And so shortly after I started, I picked up the phone and it said, someone's calling from a corrections facility, press 1 to accept. I paused, I was nervous, but as Fidelity talked about, you learn courage by couraging. So of course I answered, and I spoke to a man named Adam. He was incarcerated in South Carolina, and he called because he found a Worthy Now publication in the prison library. That's actually how a lot of people find us in prison, is they find a publication of ours laying around somewhere. And he had some questions about what we believe and who we are and how to join. And he told me what he believed, and I shared with him what I believed. And that was it. That was the call. It was as mundane as it sounds. You're probably sitting there like, Tanner, what are you talking? Why are you telling me this? What's the big revelation? And to be honest with you, I know this isn't a huge discovery, but society teaches us to be scared and to be fearful and to be neutral, to forget. But my faith in Unitarian Universalism calls me to do something different, be someone different. It tells us, Unitarian Universalism tells us that hurt people hurt people. And that you won't look into anyone's eyes. I said this earlier, you won't look into anyone's eyes that isn't worthy of love and hasn't been loved by someone. Right? But it's another thing to sit here and say it. Okay. And it's a total other thing to build that relationship with someone who's hurting and who has caused harm. Right? Especially when you haven't built a relationship with someone before. I mean, your brother, your sibling, your friend hurts you in some way. There's a relationship to restore. But what about building a relationship after the harm? And this is where I want to bring us back to looking through the lens of our faith. When we look at the world through the lens of Unitarian Universalism, we see that the promise of our faith is greater than the problems of our past. The promise of our faith is greater than the problems of our past. We've all hurt someone. We've all caused pain. We have. To ourselves, to others, to the earth. Right? And let's be honest here. I mean, let's be real. Being human doesn't come with an instructions manual, right? And if it did come with an instructions manual, it would be like those ones from IKEA that are in 10 different languages, but none of the languages are a language that you speak. And it keeps referencing plank A7, but you're convinced no plank A7 came in the box you got, right? So you're just sitting on the floor with a bunch of screws and nails surrounding you and a bunch of disassembled furniture and you have no idea what to do. I imagine that is what it would be like if we had an instruction manual as humans. But we don't. So the one thing we can put our faith in is that we know the promise of Unitarian Universalism is greater than the problems of our past. We're more than the mistakes we've made. And if we are more than the mistakes we've made, so are the people sitting in prison cells. So are the people who have caused colossal harm and done horrible things. We're all worthy of that salvation in this lifetime. Whether we live in prison or we walk in the free world, whether we've broken many hearts or we've just had our own heart broken. We all move on this same earth and all deserve a spot in the heaven we're building here. No one's exempt from that. No one. And it's easy to other ourselves, right? But we don't do that as Unitarian Universalists. We don't do this, you do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and then you're saved. That's not us. That's not our faith. There's no line you need to cross or bar you need to meet. We need to meet people where they are now. And so look, this is really easy to talk about, but really hard to do, right? Hard for me, and I know it's hard for a lot of people watching. And I'd like to take the next step together in living out our Unitarian Universalist values. I want to offer an opportunity to build a meaningful relationship through the lens of your faith that we talked about, with someone who's isolated and alone and who's found themselves in prison. My sermon today is going to end prematurely. It's going to end unfinished because I'm relying on you to take this next move with me and become a part of the movement. Because right now, Worthy Now, the Church of the Larger Fellowship's prison ministry network, has over 150 people waiting to be paired with a free world pen pal, someone to exchange correspondence with. It's just one way you can become proximate with a person who's in prison and see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in even the most difficult of circumstances. And as I was preparing to speak today, I figured I could have preached on what it's like in American prisons. I could have shared horror stories I've heard in my work with incarcerated Unitarian Universalists. I could have given statistics or reports, or shared anecdotes from our members in jails and detention centers. But I didn't do that, and I won't do that. Instead, I'll invite you into community with someone who's in prison. And I invite you to hear those stories for yourself from someone who's living it. Because that's when we really start to change ourselves, each other, and the world around us. When we get proximate and uncomfortable. When we're forced to move so Desmond can get free, right? This is how we stave off the evils and the Goliaths of the world, right? Because it's the evils of the world that tell us that certain people aren't worthy of love. It's the evils of the world that tell us that these are the forgotten people. These are the Goliaths that are terrorizing our people. So my sermon ends unfinished, relying on you to take that next step and live your Unitarian Universalist values out into the world. Because the lens with which we look at the world becomes the way we live through the world. So in preparation for this service, I asked a friend of mine, Eileen Raymond, she's a Worthy Now supporter and Free World pen pal, if she would share a few words about how being a pen pal has been memorable from her. I thought it'd be really meaningful for her to share a few words. And she's going to talk about how her friendship with John, a Unitarian Universalist who's living in prison, has changed her life. So we're going to hear now from Eileen.
I became interested in CLF's prison ministry almost a decade ago. Prisons have been a cottage industry where I live in northern New York since the 1980s. As I thought about the men and women, mainly from New York City, who find themselves assigned to prisons up here, 8 to 9 hours from their families and often in solitary confinement, I thought how difficult it must be to be cut off from family and friends. Since my life motto has always been, just because I can't do everything doesn't mean I shouldn't do the one thing I can do, I applied to Worthy Now to become a pen pal to someone incarcerated in the United States. I was paired with John, a young black man incarcerated in Texas. When I tell friends that I have a pen pal in a Texas prison, they seem surprised and curious. Why? What do you write about? And I have to admit that I too wondered what to put in that first letter. I'm a white retired college professor living a comfortable middle-class life here in Canton with my wife. What could I possibly have in common with this young man? Like any new venture, the way to start is just to start. I told John a little bit about my interests and activities and asked him what he was interested in. I soon learned that he likes to write. After he shared a few poems with me, I decided to type them up so he could see them in print. To date, John has shared literally hundreds of poems with me. When he asked about how to find poetry contests that he could enter, I helped him prepare the entries for several significant national contests. Let me share a poem he shared with me. I have a vision. Rain pours like a falling cup, drenching the foundation of my heart, sogging me to the very core. The rays of the sun dry me up, cracking like fault lines in the earth. Scorched beyond repair, my soul is sore. Sullen and put out by my world, wishing to be the source of good deeds, longing for a way to promote global happiness. Equal rights for humankind, race or creed, boy or girl, peaceful nations and unions for our seeds, letting our actions, not religions, display righteousness, living with differences by understanding, judging none, learning to love and accept all, bonding together for the common goal. Create ways for outreach and start helping, holding ourselves accountable. We will not fall. It starts by a vision. This could be a global goal. One thing I have learned is that my idea that I would be helping my pen pal was way too limiting. 5 years ago, my son was tragically killed. When I finally wrote John about why I had not written recently, he responded, I'm very hurt to hear about Warren. I truly understand life isn't meant to be this way. Children should bury parents in old age, not a parent burying their child. Eileen, I'm very sorry. I know the anger that comes with death and all the what ifs as you spoke of. I'm confident you will not turn over to the dark side. But even you will be weak at times, and that's okay. As human beings, we are entitled to own our emotions. I won't tell you it'll be okay, and you'll move on, because you won't and aren't supposed to. Never let Warren go. He belongs to your heart. You can learn to embrace him, even through death. My journey with Worthy Now has expanded my awareness of our interdependence more than I can ever expected. I set out to bring light to a fellow human being, and I ended up learning what true friends do for each other. As I minister to John, he ministers to me. Worthy Now makes all this possible by supporting free world participants like me, but even more importantly, by facilitating the growth of our more 1,000 members serving time in our country's prison system. That's why I support Worthy Now, and I invite you to join us in this ministry in whatever way you can.
Thank you, Tanner, for that call to action and deeper understanding. Please join me in singing our closing hymn, Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are
As our service comes to an end and we prepare to extinguish our chalices together, please join Tanner and me in reading the words of affirmation on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry into our lives until we are together again. Thank you for joining the Ventura congregation for this service today. Soon, you will have the opportunity to join your home congregation or any of the congregations here today for joys and sorrows perhaps, and to chat in small groups. Following the benediction, you'll see a slide with links for each congregation on your screen. The links will also be posted in the chat. If you wish to be with the Santa Barbara congregation, or you'd like to be in a conversation with our speaker today, Tanner Linden, then please stay here in this Zoom feed. You are most sincerely invited to join any congregation you wish. If you are new to us, especially if you are new to us, we wholeheartedly invite you in.
Unitarian Universalism promises that we are more than our mistakes, that we're more than the problems of our past. We're not defined by our misfortunes, our miscomings, our mistakes. Our souls are sacred and we are worthy as human beings, as gifts of the earth, especially those who are forgotten, the outcasts, the imprisoned, the oppressed. Freedom is not something that we all have, but love is something we can all give. Community is something we can build with one another. Help me continue to write this sermon. Join this movement. Become a part of looking at the world through this lens and building relationships. Our worship time has ended. Our service just begins. Go in love and in peace. Amen.